Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Slicex, the waveform editor. So this is the last bit, and there's a lot of little things in here. A lot of them you only really need to just know exist, and then when you need it, you know that you can go there to do it. So I'm just going to be saying a lot of stuff. I'll be demonstrating some stuff, but here we go. So you can play back your sample by these controls over here. So if you hit play, it plays it. It'll play it to the end of the selected region. To change the selection, double click, and this will change. First off, this will change where it just starts playing. So that's actually not a small selection. That is a playback head. If you double click and then drag, you can make a selection. And as you saw, it'll play the selection. If you hit Control A, it will select everything. Remember that the keyboard input will make it whether or not the keyboard shortcuts in Slicex work. So if you want to use the keyboard shortcuts, make sure this is on. If you hit loop, what it'll do is it will loop the section, which can be a handy dandy tool. Also, if you hit stop, it'll just stop it. So that's pretty straightforward. If now you see here that we have our sample rate, format, and tempo. Say something's awry here, or you want to use this information to stretch or perform some process on it, but you notice that it's just messed up. You want to use that information to chop it. If you hit F2, it'll bring this up, sample properties. You can change the name, add comments, change the sample rate via resampling, format, 16-bit integer, 32-bit float. And I also believe, even though it says stereo mono, I believe it also supports surround sound. You can change the tempo, and you can actually use this well, this could be really important. It lets Slicex know what the tempo is so that you can stretch it and chop it according to the grid. And you have like beats and a whole bunch of other junk in here. So you can come in here and mess with that sort of stuff. So, okay, we have a whole bunch of different save settings, but the one that's the most important in here to you, because you're able to load recent projects and stuff. You can even export the display if you're maybe making a written tutorial or something, I don't know, or just showing someone a problem you're having. And then you're able to export regions. So you can take all your regions and actually export them individually. Do I know what this stuff means? Common use, sampler use? No, I don't know what this means. I've never really used this, but it looks like that one's a WAV file, and this one is a WAV file. I don't know what the difference is. So if someone knows what the difference is, let us know. I don't use that function inside Slicex. So, okay, cool. So let's go over to the next option. We have our edit properties, which we got to by hitting F2, and you can change the same settings without having to go into that menu if you want. Over here, we have some copy and paste settings. So if you have a selection in your clipboard on your computer, you're able to go into all these different paste settings. And this gets a little confusing because you have like spectral, envelope, mix, drum. They just have all these different options, right? And that's because they can copy and let's talk about undoing real quick because that'll clear up some of this. So you may make a move up here and you may make a move down here. And if you hit Control Z, we can undo a move. So we'll hit Control Z and we see that we undid that move and it's in this area. And we notice that but if we hit Control Alt Z, it should continue to undo, right? But if we do that, now it's undoing selections and stuff. That's because this undo button is separate from this undo button. They're separate processes. They're looked at differently. So if we want to undo this one, we'd have to hit this undo button. If you right click on it, it'll bring up the undo history and just undo that last move, and we're good to go. And same here, if you right click, it'll undo that. The reason why this helps is because these are separate processes. So this has to do with envelopes. This has to do with mixes that are done with the all-purpose envelope. So I'm just telling you what these things do because I've never actually needed to come in here and undo it like this. If you can usually figure it out from here. But as far as pasting and copying and stuff, I've never had to do that. I've not found a reason that I would want to do that. So I've never, as a consequence, used that. So you can come in here and do things. You can replace things, stretch things. You can mess with it. I'm just telling you, these are functions I don't usually use. Some that you should be aware of, click-free editing is when you make an edit well, they have the same option down here, right? It's this guy right here. It says up here, click-free, smooth editing. It just does little curves, like little fades, ins, and outs when you edit so that it's click-free. That's the idea. So, okay, that's what this does. This isn't one that I do a whole bunch. One that you might find actually pretty useful if you're having an issue with missing piece of times. Maybe the timing's off and you didn't insert something. You can insert silence into your sample, and that can produce some really weird outcomes. If you want to get like really weird sound design wise, you could come in there and insert some silence and then do some scratching, and that could augment the way you scratch things. So pretty cool. If we come in now, let's move into this little wrench icon, tool icon. We have a whole bunch of envelope settings that are not available right now. That's because we have some envelope settings down here, and they control this one. What is this? Panning. We have volume, stereo separation. I believe it's done with the Haas effect, but I'm not 100% certain. And then we also have an all-purpose envelope, which I showed you its use in the video about scratching. So we have all these different envelopes, so we can change them over time. You notice that they just match the length of the sample. So you may need to zoom in to get a higher resolution. And if you want to delete a bunch of points, just get the pencil tool and right click. So you could zoom in and change the panning at this one moment, keep the panning the same elsewhere, so on and so forth. I'm assuming you know what these settings are down here. You're able to see a threshold. So if you have a threshold, which we'll have a reason to see in just a sec, this will turn that display on and off. And this one, if we turn this on and off, this is toggling through our different views. If we go through where are you? The eye will switch our views for us. So we can actually change the time format, the scroll bar. I'll let you do all this stuff. This is like so straightforward. Now this one could change the CPU efficiency. So you can change the spectrum's colors, the spectrum gradient, and you can change the number of bands. More bands, more CPU. So yeah, so I'll let you mess around in here and configure the view to the way you want. They have a dual view, which puts one on top of the other, so you sort of can get more information that way. I find it unnecessary though, most of the time. Sometimes it's quite useful if I'm trying to analyze the sound. And I'm usually doing this in Edison. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of things up here that have to do with envelopes. Those are all of these are the same settings that occur in here. So you can go ahead and check out the video in Harmer from the Ground Up if you want to know more about that. And we have a whole bunch of settings here for amp, and we're able to do a bunch of nifty things. We can come in here and normalize, reverse the polarity, lossy normalize, so it'll actually delete data, stuff like that. Fade in, declick out, all these things I'm just going to assume you have a pretty good handle on. The declicking, I don't recommend using here. They have a better option over here where you're able to do it in a region fashion. So if we made a selection, this could be fine, but you're able to declick in all regions and declick out, meaning it'll put a little fade. Declick in will put a fade at the beginning, declick out will put a fade at the end. And if you come in to perfect all regions, it'll do that automatically for both the beginning and the end. You're also able to tune the loop. And so you'll notice that a lot of options appear in here that allow you to they'll open up another thing that'll allow you to change things. So you're able to change the pitch of a loop you've selected. You're able to convert to score and dump to piano roll. There's a better option if you just click right here. It's like the same thing. So that's what those little icons do. We'll cover that in just a sec. And we're also able to send to audio as a playlist clip. I prefer to just drag and drop. So you can click this little drag icon. It will export it for you. And it will even keep the data, what do you call these things? The regions. See how it keeps the regions? How handy is that? So cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and, close Slicex for me. How nice. All right, so now we're going to come down here. So we have the ability to set loops within Slicex. Is another feature I don't really use, but you can set a loop, and you have a loop start, loop end, and it will loop through this point. Maybe you're doing something live that's important to you. We're able to set the first downbeat. We talked about this in the first video. What this does basically is sets, you can see our grid moves with it. And this sets where we put our grid. So if you're going to chop it according to the grid, it's really important that that's in the right spot, right? So, okay. And you're able to rename, quick rename also. It'll scroll through and let you rename things. So it's going to play each one, and then you can rename each thing. I'm going to cancel all. You're also able to do the same thing for quick assign trigger node stall. So it'll play the sample, you hit the key you want to play that sample, and it'll play the next one, you hit the key, so you can quickly go through and assign them accordingly if you want to do like a really specific assignment. And they also have some macros allowing you to quickly assign all the sample chops to a particular setup if it fits into a macro that you want to do. Detection, auto slice, so you're able to change your auto slice settings so when you drag something in. Also, let's say that you've moved some things around and you want to fix that. Well, if you click auto slice, Actually, it might work in this case. Yeah, well, if let's say you have a selection and you do that, and then you click auto slice, this is sharp slicing, it'll only do that for your selected area. So this is your auto slice icon. Almost all these things are things that exist within that menu over there. And we're gonna go medium auto slicing. Okay, cool. So that's what auto slice does. If you have DC offset, you can fix it. Channels, I'll let you mess with the channel settings. You can generate noise. Very interesting. This is kind of cool. You can create your own scripts and then run them not in non-real time. And you can come in here and do a whole bunch of really interesting things to it. So like there's a bit crusher in here. They have some example scripts, bit reduction, limiter, old school, whole bunch of nifty things. So, and they include a description when the thing pops up. Sometimes there are particular ones, I can't remember which one it did, but it crashed it. So I don't want to crash FL right now, so I'm not going to run it, but I'll let you go ahead and open it up and mess around with it. It's pretty fun. And you can even make your own, which is pretty wild. Don't ask me how. I don't know Pascal, which is the coding language that they said you needed to know. And they even list an app in the manual if you want to know about that. Okay, so something that's pretty common is maybe you have some noise in your sample and you'd like to get rid of it. What you can do is you can select an area where only the noise exists. Let's say, for example, this is our noise selection. It is our offending area. By the way, I'm not sure if I said this, but if you double click and then hold Alt, you can select off the grid. So I prefer to leave my snap setting on. But okay, so let's say that that's our noise area. So I'm going to go to Tools, Acquire Noise Threshold. And it has now acquired the threshold. You see that this green area has become active. This is showing me where the threshold is. And of course, this is actually part of the sample. It's not noise. But I have some options here. I can gate the noise. I can trim it. And I can trim all noise and slice up. So when you're messing with these settings, I just be careful because some of them actually delete data. Gate noise is probably the one you want because it will keep everything in time. And you see it just gated everything. We see we missed a piece right here. If we play it, it efficiently gated where our threshold was set, which again, you can turn that on and off. You see it turns a light green. If it was a higher threshold, you'd actually see a bar going across. So let's see, zoom in here. You see there's like a green bar. That's not a really great visual. Anyways, you'll see it on yours, especially when you're actually using it for its intended purpose. So, okay. That's what that does. You have some spectral capabilities, which when you see undo spectral, now you know what it's talking about. And the undo envelope, now you know what it's talking about. You have convolution reverb, blur, and equalize. These open up additional settings. And we looked at blur. Blur is friggin' cool. It like multiplies the sample across itself using an impulse response. Some mumbo jumbo like that. Really nifty stuff. You also have equalize. You can come in here and do an EQ curve across the spectrum. They give you a whole bunch of nifty options in here. I'm going to assume you know your way around EQs and understand. What's interesting here is you have an envelope setting. So filter unharmonics. Like, wow, that's like some special stuff right there. Okay, so anyways, you got an EQ, blur, convolution reverb. So this is really also CPU effective because it'll render it out for you. Regions. You can normalize all regions, declick all regions. I mean, most of this stuff is pretty good to go. Let's move over into some additional settings. So we have our view. We have our snap setting, which one that may be important to you is snap to zero crossing. This will allow you to ideally find a point where clicking should be much less of a problem. And then if you combine it with declicking, it'll definitely not be a problem anymore. So that could be a useful thing to you. Zero crossing is just where the sample crosses zero, right, on amplitude. And so that's really nice. That's a good point to put a sample chop. All right, we have selection views, zoom views. I'll let you mess with those. Undo. We can normalize things or not normalize them. So like, whoa, that's like really loud. And so I'm going to undo that. And then we can fade in, fade out. And if you hit it, you see it fades in over time. If you continue to hit it, it will get more and more severe. So I'm going to right click and undo all my fade ins. Okay, this run is the same run script menu you saw in that other one. You have the ability to do this unusual drum stretching method. And this is ideal for something that you've already figured out is you've already got a drum loop that's the correct length and you want to adjust some things about it. because maybe you're trying to preserve transients in an unusual way. So in this setting, you're able to do a lot of really cool things. You can use time multiplication to make it longer. If we look at a sampler channel, I cover this in the sampler channel videos, but we have the same exact setting right here. So we can use a time and then use that to multiply our thing. If we do something like that and like, whoa, that's so crazy. And it's a very similar deal to what's going on here. So look up the video on sampler channel. I'm not sure what video that's in, but I know I cover it. I'm pretty sure I named it sampler channel. Along with this drum stretching thing, again, it's meant to doctor loops that you've already figured out, and you just decided to stretch it to fit a particular length of time using this method. You have insert tails and auto slice. I used to know what this means, but I can't remember at this moment in time, but I believe it inserts data at the end to preserve anything that like trails off. That's just my guess. It could be dead wrong. And then we also have auto slice. This will slice it up and then it's going to stretch it. So ideally your transients will be preserved in a much better fashion. We have a method to fill. So whenever we're stretching something or pitching something, we need a way to fill in data. This is a couple methods to do this. I recommend just experimenting with it. And then again, with the tail envelope, which I cannot remember for the life of me what the tail means, but we see that we have a smooth and append, which to me also would indicate the way it fades out. So I don't know though. You can preview what you're doing here. So that's what our thing sounds like. We could change it to 50%. And so that's the sort of stuff that you would get out of here. So anyways, that's that. You can come in here and explore this. This isn't something that I normally grab. If I'm going to be doing time stretching and stuff, I prefer to just do it in the playlist. So amongst the view options we have here, we have a slide option, which this is like common in all the other ones. And the snap setting, snaps it to grid versus off grid. We've talked about that. Slide will move all points afterwards. So you see how they all move. So that's just what's going on there. So if you have a weird behavior, check your slide setting. And then we have some features up here. This just changes the view settings. So this is our deck view, waveform spectrum. This is our smooth editing. So you see bam, bam, smooth editing. And then this one is our, auto scrolling. So if you're playing back and it scrolls when it goes. I personally am not a fan of auto scrolling 99% of the time. And then, well, I don't know. I'm sure I can find a spot where I like it more. But let's go ahead and talk about this last feature. So we see our length, and then we also have the ability to scrub through our audio. If we click this little wheel here. So that's really cool. Like I would record that and just use that. Like that sounds neat. But anyways, it's just a scrub tool. So you click and scrub and you can do it that way. So, okay, cool. There's a couple other nifty options here. We're able to export. I know I said it was the last setting, but we're able to export our data according to the length of time Slicex thinks into a playlist clip. And if we open up this clip and move it over here, we can change this. Right now, if you click this button, it will just dump the data according to what it thinks it should represent. But we can augment this. We can flatten the groove to make some sort of a groove. We can pitch up some. We can quantize it differently. This is one I recommend just messing with. You can pitch up certain ones and not pitch up other ones. You can get crazy and randomize the panning and everything on each individual region. That's what all these things do. This is a lot of fun, so I recommend just playing around with that. You're able to save it, and also you can just export it by clicking and dragging, as we saw earlier. There's also one other sort of nifty feature in here that I really quite like, and that is you're able to select it and then go to your tools. I just realized I completely skipped over this too. You're able to reverse particular ones, time, stretch, and pitch shift them, and drum loop stretch, which is that weird drum stretching thing I showed you earlier. And then we also have what's called the claw machine, and we'll cover scratch one more time. So claw machine is really cool. What it does is it messes with the time of your sample. So we could, for example, every quarter note, basically, every 1/4 of a beat, we're going to trash it. I don't completely understand. I understand it has to do with the rhythm, though. And we're going to snap it to the markers, so it'll look at our markers. And because this is in quarter notes, it should sound quite musical. And you can introduce compensation stretching. I'm going to leave that off and we preview it. So it's just a cool way to generate some interesting rhythms. We can change the stretching method and the amount. And that is how that works. So you can come in with the claw machine and make some really cool rhythms, and then you can accept it. And it's a destructive edit, so it will change your data. And then we also have Scratch. And the way Scratch works is you grab the all-purpose envelope, and you come in here and you draw in a shape, and it's going to scratch it. And according to the X and Y position, it's going to change the playback position and the amount of stretching going on. And so it's like scratching in non-real time. And so it creates some really interesting effects. If we come now, you want to make sure you have something in here. Otherwise, it will not scratch it. Let me show you what it looks like when you've not done anything. So let's undo these points. And okay, now let's go into the tools and go to Scratch Envelope, and you see it's just a click now, like nothing. And so that can be confusing. But if we draw something in and then say, all right, now I want you to scratch it, now it looks all crazy. So it's basically just messing with those two things I told you about earlier. So that's that. That's a lot of like small stuff, but that's Slicex and all of its functions and features. You can change the octave selection down here at the bottom if that wasn't readily apparent, if you need to do that. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.